All right, welcome to the 5 a.m. grind. Horace, what's up, man?
Nothing much. What's up with you?
It's good. It's not bad. Life is slowly going back to normal in Ontario, which is nice to see.
Thankfully, man. Thankfully. The one thing that I didn't miss was the rush hour in the morning after in the evenings. But you know what? Thankfully, all the stores are opening up. There's no lineups outside of stores to get in. Mm-hmm. It's life's kind of going back to normal.
It is. The roads are busy again.
Yeah.
Noticed something in the Globe and Mail this week. Condo prices seem to be going back up because people are moving back into the city now.
Oh, yeah.
Have you noticed?
Last year, though, they went down 2.9% or something like that.
Prices, yeah.
For condos. But that was not because there was like all of a sudden 4,000 more units in Toronto than there would have been in a normal year because there was like that Airbnb rule and all that.
Yep.
So it was going to go back up. But overall, though, I think the market is, I wouldn't say softening, but it's not what it was earlier this year where, you know, like you give an unconditional offer and you buy or kind of go away.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We're seeing offers come in with conditions.
Oh, wow. In real estate.
Yeah,
wow.
Conditions, and there's a little bit of a back and forth in the negotiation.
Holy cow.
So there is some changes. I don't know if it's improvements.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to go down. That's my perspective.
Yeah.
If anything, it'll flat. Yeah. If anything, it'll stay flat, but I think that's another podcast.
we could cover real estate again. All right, so I thought for this week's podcast we'd cover career transitions. And career transitions in the sense that people who have jobs and people who run businesses as well, like yourself. Wanted to cover 3 questions today. Number 1, what are some of the biggest career transitions you've made? So we'll ask each other that question. Number 2, when should you consider making a career transition? And number 3, what advice would you give someone making a career transition? All right, so just career transitions in general. I guess let me ask you the first question. You've made a few career transitions, as I recall. You graduated from university. Well, why don't you tell the story? You could probably...
Well, I graduated.
And then talk about some of the career transitions you made.
So I majored in finance and then... worked at the head office at Mercedes and then Jaguar Land Rover, did like finance and strategy there. And then after 2 years, I went to law school.
Okay.
And then when I came back from law school, I was kind of trying to see what I could do, see if I could do a little bit of management consulting and stuff like that, but ultimately started my own firm. And I did work for law firms in the States.
Yep.
I did some criminal tax defense, then I came here, now I'm doing, our firm is real estate, corporate, commercial. There's a few things that we do. But yeah, I think my biggest transition was from finance into law and then just opening up or starting my own firm.
So,
things.
Interesting.
What about you?
Well, I'll cover let me dig into your story. So you made a transition from finance into law. Did you always know you wanted to become a lawyer, even in undergrad? Because I'm not sure if you...
Yeah. I mean, no, in undergrad, I knew I had to go to law school.
Oh, really? Okay, so it was predestined.
Predestined as in... I don't know if it was... frankly speaking, I did not know what the law was cut out for. And I feel like growing up, coming from... a South Asian family.
Yep.
There's like at least in our household, there's a pressure to go to school. And
post-grad?
Post-grad was definitely a pressure there. So either like, my mom's like, go to med school. My dad's like, law school. And then...
really just 2 options in a South Asian household.
Yeah. So then ultimately, I went to law school. So that was kind of predetermined. Now, I'm very happy that I went to law school. Because I feel like if I stayed in, I don't know, actually, if I stayed in the job that I had, would I have started my own business? I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows? But I appreciate, having started my own thing and going my own path as opposed to working for somebody else. And to each their own. There's nothing wrong with working for somebody else. But I kind of that transition was probably the most stressful transition. But it was also ultimately for me the most gratifying one. It was not so much going from finance to law, but for working for yourself is something that's the most gratifying.
Got it. When you were in finance, then you went into law school. In law school, was the dream always to own your own law firm, or did you think you would pursue like the traditional corporate lawyer path, join a firm, work your way up, etc.?
There's times that I did play with corporate law. I wouldn't want to do like in-house law.
Not like, general counsel.
Yeah, I would want to go into like private practice.
Yep.
But you know what? Even in law school, I was interviewing at like consulting firms like BCG and all of them while I was in law school.
Oh wow! Okay.
So I was still like, you know what? I appreciated the law, but there's something about me that always was pulling me towards the business side.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what got me into the management. Like I wanted to go and figure out how do you grow a business and how do you do all this stuff. And even today, the biggest thing that motivates me or gets me up in the morning for even with my firm is not the practice of law. It's good. I appreciate it. I enjoy practicing the law. But it's how do I make this law firm like the biggest thing since Amazon?
I love that. That's
so
really
that
cool.
business aspect of it is what really intrigues me and really keeps me up at night, where I'm just like, well, what if I did this? What if I did that? And all that stuff. So
that's interesting, your story, because I think the thing about careers is that they're never really static, and you're always making a transition because, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you're trying to figure out what you want to do. And like you said, you were in law school and then you applied to consulting firms.
Yeah.
I guess you were trying to figure out what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
You weren't sure.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I was trying. I was kind of like sure in that like I management consulting appeared to be very good or nice or attractive in that like, whoa, I can help a business go from X to Y. Right. And that for me has always lured me in. Like it was always something that I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like this is something that I want to do. It sounds, it seems fun because there's a lot of problem solving. There's critical thinking. There's some pressure too to perform, right?
Yeah.
Not some, there's a lot. But ultimately, there's a lot of things that your brain is doing and a lot of tools that you need to bring to the table to complete a task, which is it turns out to be a complex task.
Yeah.
Right. What I don't want to do is repetitive, mindless tasks over and over and over again. I'd rather just, I don't know, jump out the building.
And not do that. Interesting. Yeah, I'd say, so looking at my story, career transitions, they helped me figure out what I wanted to do. Because to be honest with you, once you graduate from university, you're what, 22? 22?
Yeah.
21, 22? To be honest with you, once you graduate from school, nobody really knows what they truly want to do or what their true calling in life really is. It's hard to say that, like at 18, I decided to pick a major and then I knew what I wanted to major in and then that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my entire life, for like 70 years that I live. That's crazy. You can't figure it out. I think for me, it was I graduated from university. I worked in accounting and audit. I absolutely hated it.
But is that what you wanted? Did you know you wanted to do that when you started undergrad?
No.
That like
so when I went to undergrad, I wanted to do entrepreneurship. I don't know what that meant. I was like, I want to be like I wanted to be like my dad because my dad had his own business. I was like, I want to do that. Yeah, hopefully school will teach me how to do this. Yeah. It didn't. Yeah. It taught me how to be an accountant.
It taught you how to be a good employee.
It did. It did. So graduated university, worked in accounting. I didn't like it. Thought that I could do more with my life. And then, I made a few transitions, obviously, as you know. Yeah. I went from, three major ones. Went from accounting to work in finance, and then from finance to my current job working in tech.
Okay.
Right? So three major transitions, I'd say. And each of them was all about sort of trying to figure out, okay, what do I really like?
Yeah.
Do I enjoy this industry, this path? And it was a lot of like going into it, making the transition, figuring it out whether or not I like it, and then moving on if I didn't, etc. I think the transition from accounting to finance was because I didn't like audit work. I just did not like audit work, so I transitioned out of that into finance. Finance at the time when I was actually trying to get into the industry seemed like a very cool industry, very fast-paced, very interesting. But landed in the finance industry, and the industry has gone through quite a bit of change as well. And that's the thing. Sometimes you jump into an industry and it's not really growing anymore. And that way, when the industry is not really growing, your growth is also limited to a certain extent. So if you're looking for growth as well, and we'll go into some of these reasons as to why you should make career transitions. But sometimes you're like, if I'm not growing here, there's really no point of you staying in that industry, which is why I switched into tech.
But my question for you is, and it's not even for this podcast, I want to know myself. You went from a bulge bracket like investment bank. You're an equity analyst.
Yeah.
Pretty reputable. I don't know if you want.
BMO.
BMO
Capital Markets.
Yeah. So you're an equity analyst there, right?
Yeah.
And you went there from that to where you currently
at Apple in tech.
Or you went to we went to tech, right?
Yeah, big tech.
And then, so my question is, was there a conversation that triggered you wanting? Because a lot of people are trying to get in to where you were at BMO.
They are.
Yeah, right.
Indeed.
There's a lot. Like in undergrad, man, everybody wanted to get into.
Everybody wanted to get into capital markets. So did I. Yeah. To be honest.
So then, was it a conversation that like kind of got you to re-look at kind of what was going on in the industry? Because I feel like a lot of people, when they want something so badly and they finally get it, they don't really see it for what it really is, right?
Yeah.
They'll be like, all right, well, I got it. This is great. And then they'll tell themselves it's perfect.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So now you've got something and you worked hard for it, right?
I did. I worked my butt off.
Yeah. Because you went from like, you before BMO, you were at another.
I was like at I'm simplifying here, but at an advisory firm before that.
Yeah.
Well, at Deloitte. Yeah, Deloitte Advisory.
Deloitte, and then you kind of bounced around. You're moving around the country, right?
It was.
Yeah.
To make
so it was a good journey, right? It was a very strong learning experience, but it was a bit of a journey.
It was.
So what was there a conversation that led you to think, all right, I want to pivot again?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. There was a conversation that I had, not necessarily with my boss at the time, but it was more so with my colleagues. There was that. There was just a general understanding of the industry as well, and then just growth, career growth as well. And maybe I'll cover all three of them because, it's nice to go into some of the details. So the conversation really was, the industry did shift in just like equity research. So the work that I was doing, if you remember, since 2008, the financial industry itself has been changed in the sense that compensation isn't what it used to be, like in the early 2000s and the 1990s. Banks are under pressure. People don't want to pay a lot of money for research type of work either. Basically compensation started to go down, which makes it sort of like, let's be honest, money is a huge motivating factor if you do switch industry. So it wasn't as good as it used to be. And what the banks started doing as well, they started culling a lot of research folks and sales and trading folks. For example, there used to be a saying at BMO as well. Once someone leaves the sales and trading desk, that job doesn't get replaced. They just it's natural attrition. So people leave, they don't replace it. Because now some of that work is being done by computers. Okay. And they just need fewer traders. They give them more work, more industries to cover, and that's it. That's kind of it. So the industry's changing. People don't want to pay brokers because let's be honest, when you're paying for research at BMO and TD, there isn't that much of a difference. Right? It's the same service, right? So then the banks are starting to compete. It becomes a commoditized product, and then people are just competing on price. That's one. And the other thing is, if they're culling the ranks, etc., they're trying to make it a lot more tighter. Moving up is a lot tougher for you as an individual because you kind of have to wait for your boss to either retire or leave a company for you to move up.
And that can be a while.
And what they're doing now, even some of the big banks like Scotiabank, etc., they're trying to promote. So folks like me, younger folks, because they're like, we'll promote these guys to analyst level, so to like managing director level, and just pay them less because they're cheaper. Because some previous MDs from the, who've been grandfathered and been there for quite a while, they have like big salaries simply because they lived in the 1990s and the 2000s, so their pay has been quite high. It's hard to adjust someone down who makes that much money. It's easier when you just promote someone young and just pay them a little less, and then that's an immediate cost savings for you, as opposed to hiring someone more expensive. So yeah, the industry has changed a lot, and just career growth is limited. So I thought, you know what, like, why be in finance? It's not really an industry that is growing a lot, which is why I decided to move into tech, where the industry seems to be, obviously growing, where a lot of the growth is. And fundamentally, when I was leaving, I had a conversation with my boss, who's been in the industry for God knows how many years, 30 years or something like that. And he told me, like, he's an older guy and very big picture guy. He's like, you know what, Ali, there are two things in the world. They're disruptors and they're the companies being disrupted. I'd rather be in a disruptor company than I'd rather be in a company where it's going to be disrupted. Right? And fundamentally speaking, it's true. In life, like, it doesn't need to be so complicated. It's one or the other. Life, essentially, if you look at it, it boils down to a very simple concept. I like it when people simplify, and it's true. Like, do you want to be where people are disrupting industries and when it's growing, or do you want to be at a company where it might be disrupted by someone? Yeah. So that's why I transitioned out of that, because then I also saw. Because one of the ways, and I'm going into a lot of specifics here, but one of the ways you can also transition out of the previous job I had was you go to what's called the buy side, like basically join a hedge fund or something like that. And the funny thing is, I had talked to a few guys who worked at hedge funds, and funny enough, for a previous guest, Tim Brady did exactly this. He worked, at RBC in equity research. He went to Picton Mahoney, and today he bought a business and he runs that. That's the traditional path, where you become an equity research guy, you go to a buy-side firm, and then you try to move up there. But even at the buy-side firm, when I was speaking to somebody there, he's like, Ali, it's the same thing. You come here, you sort of make a lateral move, it's about the same pay, etc. And then in order for you to move up, you again have to wait for somebody to retire or leave. Right? And let's be honest, as a younger person, growth is important to you in your career. I mean, there are guys in Silicon Valley who are our age, who are CEOs of multi-billion-dollar companies. And let's be honest, I know they're smart, but Horace, they're not. They're not that much smarter, right? It's not like, oh my God, 3 standard deviations of smart above 100%, you, right? 100%. It's not like that. It really isn't like that.
But so then why didn't you start your own business within finance?
In finance? You mean something like a hedge fund or something?
Hedge fund or just analyst shop or anything like that?
Never crossed my mind.
Never crossed your mind?
Too much of a chicken, I guess. Yeah.
No. I mean, I felt like it was the opposite of that, man. It's like to be able to, it takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of self-awareness and a lot of understanding. You have to have some kind of confidence, man, to like move towards something that big and then be like, all right, now I'm going to move to start towards something else, right? Yeah. Like with my transition, I went from finance to law, but a lot of it was, I went to law school. So I was retrained, With you went from finance to tech. Yeah. But there was no training period in between. You had to train yourself, right? How was that? Were you able to just kind of read stuff online, or did you get mentors, or what was?
My current job is sort of related to my previous job. It requires you to just have finance and analytical skills, the base. And then the thing about like big tech at Apple and any other company is they throw you into the deep end and you just learn, right? You need to have initiative and be a self-starter. Yeah. If you're the type of person that likes to have procedures, and you like working in a command and control organization where, orders are being passed down, you're being told exactly what to do, you wouldn't thrive in like Apple or something like that. Because it's very much, look, we hire smart people, we give them this, and they figure out how to do it.
Yeah, okay. Wow.
Yeah. It very much is like that. It's interesting. It's kind of different. But yeah, enough about me. Why don't we go back to some of our questions? Yeah, so I guess this is a good question, given my story right now that I just went over. When should you consider making a transition? And for me, maybe I'll go, since I've been talking about this. Yeah, for me, when I switched away from BMO and working in finance was because, my career growth just seemed to be limited at the company. So I thought, okay, if I'm not going to be promoted here, if there's no path to growth, why stay?
I would also say when, in terms of like time, it's also earlier on in life. As you get older, right, you have more responsibilities. It gets more difficult. If you get married, if you have kids, all that stuff, then the transition, you're going to be more risk averse.
Yeah.
So I would say it's better not to be so hung up earlier on when you like graduate or when you're earlier like on in your career. And it's better to go figure out those different things and then settle down as you're kind of like taking on more responsibility.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you want to start a business, for example, right? If I was married and had a kid, it would be very difficult for me to quit my job and then think about like, okay, now I'm going to learn and whatever, right? Because before that, if I'm not making any money, the only person that's starving is me. I'll figure it out, But now you got other people; they're depending on you, so it's a whole different type of mindset.
Yeah, completely different mindset. I made like 2 transitions, I'd say. Yeah. So just like looking back at my story and just hearing it, the first transition from accounting to finance was because I didn't like the audit work I was doing. That's one. That's one reason why you could transition. And then from BMO to tech was I wasn't growing. What are some other reasons that you think are a good reason to make a career transition for? You don't like the work you're doing is one.
Yeah.
You're not growing. Is there any other reason?
Financial reasons?
Oh, you just more money?
Yeah. I mean, I you know what? Like, Kevin O'Leary says it all the time in the Shark Tank, if anybody watches that, right? Yeah. Where if there's like businesses, he's like, yo, take this behind the barn and shoot it, right? Because the business is losing money. I've seen people go through years, right? I'm not talking about 1 or 2. I'm talking about like 5, 6 years, right? Where their business is not doing well and they're only surviving off of their parents or like their lines of credits and stuff like that. Okay. So if you're in that kind of situation, okay, it's better to do a career transition and move on to something else. All right. Whether it's a different business, or whether it's a different, like a job or whatever it is, it's time to move on. And sometimes people don't do that because they're hoping something will turn or change or whatever. No. If it's not working in 2-3 years, max, I would say give it like 2 years for you to have some kind of path to profitability. Yeah. Right? And if it's not happening, then, and you have to be pragmatic. You can't be like, oh, tomorrow the world's going to change. All of a sudden I'm going to get all this unforeseen business, right? Yeah. You have to know how you're going to be profitable and how you're going to get there. If that's not happening, then leave. Right.
The other reason why career transitions could happen as well. So one, we said, you don't like the work you're doing. Number 2, you're not growing. Number 3, you just said is the work you're doing isn't necessarily profitable. You just have to be very objective and realistic about it. Number 3, it could be sometimes you're forced to transition because the industry is dying. Yeah. You're laid off, you're let go, etc. And you see this a lot nowadays, and you and I know this. Like a lot of older executives, once they get in their 50s, etc., if they're not part of the C-suite or very important, the companies just cut them off. And they're like,
middle management.
Yeah, you're an expensive exec. We could do the work you're doing by hiring someone cheaper, so we'll just cut you off. Yeah. And it's so tough in your 50s to then find another job because then everybody else who's going to try and hire you is going to be like, oh, I don't know if this person can do
And
this
essentially the person who's replacing you is most like the person you trained. Because
sometimes it is.
You train and then they know what you're doing and they're cheaper. They're like a quarter of the price. Then they're like, all right, well, you can go. Yeah. But the thing is I feel like no matter what industry we're in, some industries may be dying, but more or less everybody's going to get walked out sooner or later. That's my kind of thing. For the majority of people, unless you make it a C-suite, very few people do, or like just upper management. Again, very few people do. If you're in middle management, it's not about if, it's about like when. It's a matter of time before you get walked out because either the industry's dying, there's cheaper labor, there's a lot of pressures. There's a lot of stuff, even with like within lawyers, the amount of work that now, because of technology, you can outsource, you could get other people to do. It's insane. You don't need as many lawyers as you once did before, right? For a firm to practice at a certain level. So you get walked, and if you're like, for example, working at a law firm and all of a sudden you're moving out, right? And there's even like AI now. I know that, I forgot what kind of software it was for tax law. There was like software created for lawyers you can look up cases or whatever based on what the situation was
Oh,
in the
yeah,
business.
okay, interesting.
And it tells you like what case law and all that
Yeah,
stuff you should
yeah.
be looking at. And it's all like that used to be done by a lawyer who's doing legal research as to what is a precedent on something, right? And why different arguments would work. Now you got a program doing that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I don't know how great it is, but it is a sign to what's to come.
Yeah.
You know? Like, it's like if it's not now, it's going to be tomorrow, where a lot of this stuff is just kind of going.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, don't you, I find for our generation at least, these transitions, these forced transitions will happen more frequently and to a higher degree as well. I think our parents' generation enjoyed the privilege of being able to work at one company for their entire life, having a defined benefit contribution, pension plan and all this other stuff. But we don't have that luxury anymore. I think for our industry, like, things are changing a lot faster, innovations happening a lot quicker, things are being disrupted.
I feel like if you look at, like, for example, after World War II, when like enough of Europe was just gone.
Yeah.
A lot of there's a lot of devastation, I guess, and there's a lot of rebuilding. At that point, you needed a lot of engineers for like just real world construction. Not that the projects are done yet now, but they're nowhere near how they were before.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now everybody's got like, because you're not only engineering projects, you're trying to figure out methods and methodologies and all these other things.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So all of that stuff now is kind of done. Now you're kind of in a rhythm where if you want to build a road, that's what you got to do. All that stuff is set out, right? I feel like in the coming years, we're going through we're building out our like information technology infrastructure.
Yes.
There's not enough people. Like before, you couldn't find enough engineers, right? Americans, I know you'd get visas in America. They took engineers from around the world.
Yeah.
Now you're not doing that anymore because they don't need it.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing now with like software developers and all that stuff, because we're digitizing, you're doing all this now. And I think in the next 20, 30 years, it's going to be happening because there's just not enough people out there to do all this work.
Yeah. Oh, it's so interesting because, like, I think about, just look at the U.S. So there used to be people who used to work on farms. That was like the first thing. And then there was the Industrial Revolution. So there were factories. And then all those jobs went to China or something. So now it's becoming like a knowledge economy of sorts, right? Where all the engineering and the design talent is in the U.S. I guess, we're moving towards another transition as well, where I guess some of this work is going to be automated by software, robots, whatever the hell it is. Yeah. And then human beings, again, will have to transition one more time. So it's, it's sometimes like it's a joke if you think you're just going to be able to just sit there on your laurels and be able to be like, I'm going to work this job for the rest of my life. No, things are going to change, and you're going to have to cultivate that beginner's mindset, constantly learn, constantly adapt, and change.
No, 100%.
Yeah. All right. So what would you say, just for someone, some advice for someone who's looking to make a career transition? What would be some of your advice?
I would say don't be afraid. Just jump into it.
Yeah, don't be afraid. Yeah. I think it'd be the same thing for me too, right? If you're looking for growth, etc., looking to try something else, career transitions are great. Like, go ahead and go for that change and try to figure out what it is that you really like doing, and don't be afraid to make that change. But I'll leave it there. Yeah, career transitions are good. They're just a way to learn and figure out what you actually like.
The biggest thing that prevents people is the fear of the unknown.
Yeah,
just get over that, and then I think it's good. It's always good, man. You always learn something new. You'll
always learn something new. About what you like and what you don't like. Exactly. All right, so we'll leave it there then. We'll see you guys on the next podcast.
Take care, guys.
Take care.